The year is 1917. Russia is collapsing. The Tsar has abdicated, soldiers are deserting, and peasants are seizing land. In the middle of this storm, a man steps off a train in Petrograd, bald, bearded, with eyes that burn like fire. His name, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. In a matter of months, he will lead a revolution that shakes the entire world. But who was this man? Where did he come from? And how did he rise to command one of the most consequential revolutions in human history? Today, we dive deep into the life of Vladimir Lenin, from his childhood in a provincial Russian town, to his years as a radical exile, and finally to his dramatic seizure of power in 1917. This is not just the story of one man. It is the story of an empire collapsing, of ideas colliding, and of a new age being born in blood and fire. Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, later known as Lenin, was born on April 22, 1870, in the quiet town of Simbirsk, perched on the Volga River. His family was educated, cultured, and deeply loyal to the Tsarist system. His father, Ilya, worked as a school inspector, a rare position of honor for someone of their modest background. His mother, Maria, was intelligent, multilingual, and fiercely protective of her children. For a time, the Ulyanovs lived in relative peace. They read literature. They discussed philosophy. They believed in the promise of education to elevate Russia. Young Vladimir was a bright child, serious, competitive, with a sharp memory. But in 1887, tragedy struck. Lenin's older brother, Alexander, was arrested for participating in a plot to assassinate Tsar Alexander III. At just 21, Alexander was hanged. The Ulyanov household was shattered. For the young Vladimir, it was a defining moment. His father had died just the year before. Now his brother was executed by the state. To Lenin, this was proof that the Tsarist system was not reformable. It was brutal. It was unyielding. And it had to be destroyed. At school, Lenin excelled. Teachers noted his brilliance, but also his arrogance. He devoured the works of radical thinkers, Chernyshevsky, Herzen, and later Karl Marx. By the time he entered Kazan University in 1887, Lenin was already marked by tragedy, anger, and a burning sense of purpose. Within months at Kazan, Lenin joined radical student groups. He organized protests. The police responded with swift repression. He was expelled from university and placed under police surveillance. But this only hardened him further. Exile from Kazan did not silence Lenin. At home, he buried himself in books. He mastered Marxist theory. He studied economics, law, and philosophy with obsessive discipline. He passed his law exams and began working as a lawyer. But his true focus remained on revolution. By the 1890s, Russia was changing. Factories were springing up. Peasants were flooding into cities. Workers were striking. Lenin saw in this chaos the seeds of a workers' movement. He joined underground Marxist circles, distributing illegal pamphlets, organizing workers, and writing sharp critiques of the Tsarist regime. In 1895, Lenin founded the Union of Struggle for the Emancipation of the Working Class in St. Petersburg. It was a daring move. For the first time, he was not just a reader of Marx. He was a revolutionary leader. But the Tsarist police were always watching. Later that year, Lenin was arrested, sentenced to 3 years in Siberian exile, cold, remote, cut off from the movement he had helped create. Yet exile only deepened his resolve. There in the snowy wilderness, he studied harder than ever. He wrote pamphlets, letters, and plans for the future. He also adopted a pseudonym, Lenin, a name that would soon become infamous across the world. And when his exile ended, he was ready to build something greater, ready to lead. When Lenin's Siberian exile ended in 1900, he did not return to quiet life. Instead, he plunged back into revolutionary activity with ferocity. That same year, he left Russia and headed abroad. Western Europe offered freedom to publish, freedom to organize, and a safe distance from the Tsar's secret police. In Switzerland, Lenin met other Russian exiles. They debated endlessly about strategy, about Marxism, about how to bring revolution to the vast backward empire of the Tsars. Lenin quickly proved himself different. He was not content with theory alone. He demanded action. In 1900, he launched a new underground newspaper, Iskra, the spark. Its mission, to ignite the flame of revolution across Russia, smuggled into factories and villages, Iskra spread radical ideas. Lenin wrote tirelessly, attacking the Tsarist system, but also criticizing other socialists for what he saw as weakness. By 1903, tensions within the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party erupted. At the Second Party Congress in London, the movement split into two factions, the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, and the Mensheviks, led by Julius Martov. The split was not just about names, it was about vision. The Mensheviks wanted a broad, democratic party, open to many voices. Lenin wanted discipline. He wanted a small, tightly controlled vanguard that would lead the workers with iron clarity. "Give us an organization of revolutionary," he declared, "and we will overturn Russia." This marked the birth of the Bolsheviks, ruthless, centralized, focused. The party became an extension of Lenin's will, but Russia itself soon erupted. In 1904, the empire went to war with Japan. The mighty Russian fleet was destroyed, the army humiliated. Hunger and anger boiled in the streets. On January 22, 1905, thousands of workers marched peacefully to the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. They carried icons and sang hymns. They wanted justice, better wages, and reform. Instead, the Tsar's soldiers opened fire. Men, women, and children fell in the snow. The day became known as Bloody Sunday. The shock was electric. Strikes spread across the empire. Peasants seized land. Sailors mutinied. Revolution had come to Russia 10 years before Lenin would seize power. From exile, Lenin followed events closely. He rushed back, eager to guide the movement. But he was cautious. The 1905 revolution lacked leadership, lacked discipline. Soviets, workers' councils, emerged spontaneously in cities, uniting workers and intellectuals. Lenin admired them, but the Bolsheviks were still too weak to take control. By the end of 1905, the uprising faltered. The Tsar offered concessions, a parliament, the Duma, but retained his power. The army crushed revolts with brutal violence. Thousands were executed or sent to Siberia. For Lenin, 1905 was both inspiring and sobering. It proved that revolution was possible. The people could rise. But it also showed that spontaneity was not enough. Organization was everything. As the years passed, Lenin drifted across Europe, Geneva, Paris, Krakow, always writing, always plotting. He lived modestly, often in poverty, supported by comrades. His wife, Nadezhda Krupskaya, was his closest ally. Together they built networks, maintained ties with Russia, and prepared for the next great storm. Still, divisions with the Mensheviks plagued the movement. Endless arguments, endless debates. Lenin grew increasingly impatient. He believed history would not wait. Only ruthless discipline could deliver victory. By 1914, a new catastrophe exploded, the First World War. Millions marched to the front. Empires collapsed into chaos, and Lenin saw his chance. But before that chance could come, he would be hunted across Europe, branded a traitor, and forced into hiding once again. As the thunder of artillery echoed across the continent, Lenin sharpened his pen and prepared his revolution. When World War I erupted in 1914, Lenin was living quietly in Switzerland. But the war shattered Europe. Millions of soldiers marched to the front. Empires poured their wealth into the slaughter. For Lenin, it was proof of everything Marx had written: imperialist nations devouring themselves for profit and power. Most European socialists rallied behind their governments. They voted for war credits. They called on workers to fight for their nation. Lenin was furious. To him, this was betrayal. The working class had no country. The real enemy was not foreign soldiers, but the capitalists and monarchs sending them to die. In 1915, he issued a radical call: turn the imperialist war into a civil war. In other words, do not fight the Germans. Fight your own government. Overthrow it. For this, Lenin was branded a traitor. He was watched, hunted, forced to move constantly. Yet he continued, hammering his message: the war must become a revolution. By 1917, Russia was at breaking point. Millions of soldiers had died. Food was scarce. The economy collapsed. In February, strikes in Petrograd turned into mass demonstrations. Troops mutinied, refusing to fire on the crowds. Within days, the Tsar abdicated. 3 centuries of Romanov rule ended overnight. In Switzerland, Lenin could hardly believe it. Russia had overthrown its monarch, but not yet its system. A provisional government, led by liberals and moderate socialists, took power. They promised reform, but crucially, they kept Russia in the war. To Lenin, this was unacceptable. He knew he had to return. But how? The war made travel nearly impossible. The borders swarmed with spies. Then came the infamous deal. With German approval, Lenin and his comrades boarded a sealed train. The German Kaiser allowed passage, hoping Lenin would destabilize Russia further. It was a gamble that would change history. On April 3, 1917, Lenin stepped onto the platform at Finland Station in Petrograd. Crowds of workers and soldiers waited. They expected moderation, compromise. Instead, Lenin delivered a thunderbolt. In his April theses, he declared, "No support for the provisional government, peace, bread, and land. All power to the Soviets." The message electrified radicals and horrified moderates. Even Bolsheviks were stunned. But Lenin's words cut through the chaos. He gave direction, clarity, and an uncompromising vision. Revolution, not reform. The months that followed were turbulent. The provisional government stumbled. It could not end the war. It could not feed the people. Soldiers deserted en masse. The Soviets, those councils of workers and soldiers, grew stronger. And at their center, the Bolsheviks gained power. Lenin went underground when the government tried to arrest him in July. But his ideas spread like wildfire. By the autumn, Petrograd was ready. October 1917. The city trembled. Workers occupied factories. Red Guards drilled in the streets. In the Smolny Institute, Lenin pressed his comrades. The time was now. No more waiting, no more compromise. On the night of October 24th, Bolshevik forces moved. They seized bridges, post offices, railway stations. Almost without bloodshed, they surrounded the Winter Palace, where the provisional government clung to power. As dawn broke, the palace fell. The ministers were arrested. The Bolsheviks declared victory. Lenin emerged triumphant. Before the Soviet Congress, he proclaimed, "We shall now proceed to construct the socialist order." The Russian Revolution had begun, and with it, the world was changed forever. The Bolsheviks had seized power, but holding it was another matter. Russia in 1917 was a vast empire, shattered by war, hunger, and chaos. Enemies circled from all sides. The provisional government was gone, but monarchists, liberals, and even rival socialists were determined to crush the Bolsheviks. Civil war erupted. On one side stood the Reds, Lenin's Bolsheviks, controlling Petrograd and Moscow, promising peace, bread, and land. On the other side, the Whites, a loose coalition of Tsarist officers, nationalists, and foreign armies determined to restore the old order. From 1918 to 1921, Russia became a battlefield. Entire cities starved. Villages burned. Brothers fought against brothers. The Red Army, built by Leon Trotsky, fought with ruthless discipline, watching his world collapse and deciding to build a new one.